Hello everyone and welcome to Avantika Designeering Series or ADS as we like to call it. Every week on Wednesday, we feature design and technology leaders who share their professional journey, their thoughts on their domain of work, and designeering where the world of design and engineering meet. Make sure you follow us on social media, Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook and Twitter. And with that, let's continue with your show.
With the constantly fluctuating industrial and economic trends, having a consistent brand experience can ensure an array of loyal customers. But in addition to seamless and immersive experiences, customer recall also relies on the emotional connections between a brand and its consumers. It can help with improving the overall brand image and also with gaining the confidence of the customers. So, how can designers create a brand strategy that can keep up with the fluctuating market? To know more about this theme, in this episode, we interact with Ayan Pal, Chief Creative Officer and Creative Director at Deloitte Digital. With over 2 decades of experience in the design industry, he holds expertise in art direction, digital marketing, graphic designing, corporate branding, and much more. And that's why, on our journey of discovering designeering, we talked to him about design, certainty in uncertainty. Hello, Ayan. Welcome to Avantika Designeering podcast series. It's an honor and pleasure to host you on our show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Great. So, Ayan, let's start with an icebreaker question. Designers should keep an open mind and stay up to date on industry trends. While keeping an open mind, it is necessary to learn about the trend. The question that I have for you there is, how does a designer ensure that information is thought, dissected, and relayed as effectively as possible across teams, sectors, and products?
Yeah, so what I would say is, like, as we know the statistics, right? Like some 97 or 98% of the things that we absorb is visual, and thankfully a designer's job is a very visual piece where of course it feeds the mind through the whole visual medium. So apart from keeping the mind open, I would say is like keep your eyes open, because and we are always looking for something, something specific, and we always miss the smaller things which can make us a better designer. So don't just look for references, look for interesting things, look for things that will challenge you, and of course do some reading, which I think I can personally say that that's something that I did not do initially in my life or my career. But then reading up does help one to open one's mind, and also what is most important for a designer is relevance. So design, as we know, is just solving a problem, right? So, and it has to be a relevant solution. So we have to keep relevance in mind, and we have to make the difference between design and art, and apply our sensibility and our skills and our talent towards a certain problem, with all that we've read, because that more comes subconsciously, because you cannot consciously bring out something and apply it somewhere. So that's how I would say, like, keep your eyes open, keep your ears open, listen more and say less, and understand the situation, rather than jumping onto it and providing a solution.
Wow, Ayan, that's quite a few bunch of interesting advice, and I'm sure our listeners are going to learn a lot from it, and I'm sure they'll also benefit when they go out and apply this. So, while we did the icebreaker, let's move to talking about your journey. With over 2 decades of experience in the design industry, having collaborated with some of the world's most iconic brands, you have held senior positions over the years. Can you take us through your professional journey, and can you tell us whether it was as simple as it looks on your LinkedIn profile or your resume, or was the journey a challenging one?
Sure. It was surely not as easy as it looks on the CV, and like I've seen more downs than ups, and that's where your grit and passion for design is tested. And I feel my career to me is quite a learning. And there are a lot of mistakes I've made, and I would love for today's designers to learn from that rather than reliving the same mistake. So of course I only knew two things that I could do well. One is play cricket and the other one is design. I come from a design family. Is like my dad is a painter and he was in advertising, so everybody except me thought that I would be a designer. I started believing that once I failed at cricket. So then the next best thing that I could do was design. That's where I jumped in. And one of the, if you could say, a problem area or one of my strengths is when I jump in deep and I jump in with everything. So I got into College of Art in Delhi, and that's the only time my father weighed in as to what I should study with. So I studied with painting, and there was a lot of emphasis on understanding drawing and compositions and types of painters. And After that, I had vouched that I will not get into advertising. So I got into uh, I would say 2D, 3D animation and virtual walkthrough. So I was a part of the team that created India's first virtual walkthrough, which was of the Taj Mahal. I stayed at the Taj Mahal for 15 days continuously. And then we did a virtual walkthrough of Goa churches and a lot of other monuments in India. But then 9/11 happened, and that is the time I was working with a company called Metrolight. It's a production company in Hollywood, and I was selected as one of the six who would go to Hollywood and train for creating a production team in India, which was Dragonheart 2, which never got made. And I was on cloud nine, but then 9/11 happened, and the whole IT bubble, if I could, the dot com bubble burst. And then it was more of running helter skelter. And that was a time when, of course, luckily I did not get a job anywhere else. I tried jobs at call centers and everything, but then I didn't get it. But then I landed up with what is called Digitas now. It was called Solution Integrated Marketing. It's a company of Publici, and they used to handle direct marketing for 70% of Indian IT clients. So it was still direct marketing and not advertising, and I was still sticking to my guns. And then, of course, I feel, at least for me, if I could work with Ogilvy, that was a dream, right? And a call came one day saying that there is a position available. Why don't you come and talk to us? And I still remember it was a Friday. I went and spoke to them, and they asked me to join on a Monday. And I joined Ogilvy in 2 days, and it was like a dream come true. And the rest of the 2.5 years that I spent at Ogilvy was more of an institution, and it it was a time when I actually learned a lot, how to brainstorm, how to ladder an idea, how to craft your design. And there were these stalwarts like Emmanuel Uputru and all these people who like won multiple awards for one show and Cannes and everything. So you just sit and watch them work and you learn by yourself. And at the same time, I got to work on iconic brands like, say, Chevrolet. I was the one who launched Chevrolet in India, and then Shivas and parts of Limca. And so advertising happened, and the biggest smile was on my wife's face, because she always told me that you are meant for advertising. And I lived in denial. But then Ogilvy happened, and then after Ogilvy, then I was called over to Rediffusion DYNR. So I had earned some name in pure art direction in the industry in 2.5, 3 years. And Bacardi was coming up with a campaign. So I just joined rediffusion DYNR for exactly 10 months, because once the campaign was out, I was then on to contract advertising, which is a sister concern of JWT, where I had a bunch of friends. So they were just waiting for the campaign to get over at rediffusion. And I joined contract, and contract was a long drawn, I would say, affair. And it was an amazing journey where I launched SpiceJet in India, and I worked very closely with British High Commission. We created one of India's biggest murals, which was 648 feet by 6 feet, which was on climate change. And then I worked on NIIT. Like for the 5 years that I was a contract, every design and creatives of NIIT and GNIIT went from my desk, and I also launched NIIT University. But then in advertising we generally see people nearing 40 and above 40, they generally disappear, and a lot of them you can't find them. So I was living in that insecurity of I'm just 4 5 years away from 40, and where do I land? And that's when I took my leap, and Leo Burnett from East Africa called, saying that why don't you come and build the team. So I left for Kenya for a year, and I started building the team for around 4 5 people. And in 1 year, due to personal reasons, I had to come back. But then during that time, we won over Samsung, and L'Oreal got realigned, and we also launched uh, an airline in Eastern Africa. And so then uh, where I work, which Deloitte happened, and they said we are looking to set up a design studio, and it would be a mix of engineering and design, and it was a new space. And very frankly, even now when my boss and me we talk, we say that we never had a plan. But then we started with 8 people and zero revenue. Now we have 100 plus million of revenue and more than 1,000 people in the last 8.5 years. So it's been an amazing journey, and I feel blessed because I've just stuck to design, come what may. And I think 9/11 made me do that, where I knew that this is what I could do well, and let's keep doing this well. And here I am, still growing the team and looking at different spaces.
Excellent. That's an incredible journey, Ayan. So many interesting experiences, organizations, and brands that you've had an opportunity to work with. In fact, your experience brings me to my next question, where creating a team of designers is a long process that does not happen overnight, of course. You have been successful in building an effective team of designers, but you must consistently win customers' trust when building a team as well. The question that I have for you there is, what were some of the challenges you faced in building a team while also gaining clients' confidence to keep it busy?
Okay, so from my if you look at my career, I can pretty much split it into two parts. One is the designer with a lot of ego in the beginning, uh, and what I realized is that I was losing a lot. I was closing myself, but then thrown into consulting, it was a totally different ball game. And what I would say is, like, the challenge I faced was to bring down the ego of the designer, and to make them understand that you are solving a problem. To be able to solve a problem, you need to listen to people. And uh, biggest thing designers, I would say, fail to do is take feedback in the right way, you know. And what comes in the way is, of course, ego. So that's one of the challenges. Two is treating the client like a third party. You can't design and take it to the client and wait for his approval and then come and do the work again. So what we managed to do is we made the client a part of the whole process, right? So not that they designed, but their problems were heard very minutely. And every design that we shared, it was again relevant to their problems. So we spoke through the whole thing, saying these were your problems and this is how we solved it, and these are the ramifications of it. And even taking it to the level of what would be the impact of it. So once the client becomes a part of the whole process and gets to see the design at every stage, then it becomes a much easier journey. And he also feels responsible and contributes constructively. So there has to be some training or some inclusion that you have to do with the client to be able to reach that. So we've been able to do that, and those are one of our rule settings when we start off a project, is that the equation with the client is one of the team, we are inclusive, rather than making them an approval post, or somebody who from outside just passes a comment.
Wow, interesting and well said, Ayan. In fact, building a team which can go out and deliver consistently is definitely a challenge. And I think one of the biggest role of any leader is to keep recruiting great team members and extracting great work from it. So I'm sure that that would have been an incredible amount of work along with the team. And while we've been speaking about your journey, there's so much interesting stuff that you've been sharing about the world of design, that you come from visual communication. So let's start a certain conversation around that. Visual communication is a perfect integration of form and function, as we all know. It lies at heart of generating interest and builds an emotional connect with customers. So the question that I have for you there, Ayan, is how can designers utilize the power of imagination, emotion, and intelligence to cement customer recall and loyalty?
Yeah, so there is one word for it, that's empathy. And that it's just like a simple word, like the word simple, but it is very tough to practice, to get into the customer's shoes and to understand. And that's why we create personas in the whole design process. And we try, so a persona is a collection of it's a fictitious character, but a collection of data of similar people. And a persona is a lighthouse for keeping your design true. So you keep on bouncing it off the persona, saying that if it's going to actually appeal to that person, or if it's going to solve the problem of that person in those shoes. So I think empathy is what helps us do that. And as a designer, we cannot operate without empathy. Again, getting back to the relevance part of it, right? This is not art, right? We just don't make designs for the sake of design. Designs solve problems. It's a plan to solve a problem. Connecting to the user is the most important thing to solve the problem, rather than just coming out with a solution. So uh, open your mind, again, listen more. And if you listen hard enough and you listen beyond what the person is saying, and can imagine what that person goes through, I think that to the highest extent. And then that's what I have been doing. And also in person, what I have started doing is, like, also when somebody says something, also read the body language of that person. So he might be using a word, because language has its own limitations, but his expressions and his body language would add to that language, to I would say, add more context to what he or she is saying, so that you can solve his or her problem. And keep sharing it with that person. It's not that I go away and design and bring it and it's done. You have to keep him as a part of it, use yourself as a tool to solve that person's problem.
Hey, did you know Deloitte Digital was named the winner of the Forrester Wave Award 2021, an evaluation of the leading brands in the commercial services industry? This study demonstrates how each company assists infrastructure and operations experts in selecting the best one for their clients' requirements. Brilliant and well said. In fact, as we all know, empathy is right at the center, at the heart of the word design itself. And the better the understanding, and the better the empathy with the customer, I think it leads to actually creating the best products for them, leading to loyalty. Beautifully, beautifully mentioned by you, Ayan. And while talking about visual communication, it's not just about the visual expression, it also includes research, analysis, idea, effort, practical skills, and many other aspects leading to a needed outcome. The process gets even deeper when we have to create a consistent brand experience. The question that I have for you next, Ayan, is how can designers have a systematic design approach that will help them to achieve creative development?
Okay, so you mentioned the word brand, and whenever we hear brand, we think it's something like one of these big brands who does X Y Z and who has these types of advertising and everything. And to simplify it, I think you should treat a brand like a personality, right? So both ways it works. A person has a branding and a brand has a personality. So to stay consistent to a brand, I think you should understand it as a person, saying that maybe this brand speaks in first person. This brand only speaks in short phrases. This brand wears this type of color. This brand connects to this type of people, right? So if you draw all these out, you'll suddenly start seeing a person who has a certain who has certain traits and likes and dislikes and wants to talk in certain ways. So as soon as you do that, you immediately, or rather I would say, it's easier to connect to that personality, and then it becomes easier to stay consistent with it.
Wow, absolutely well said, Ayan. In fact, when we talk about brand, I think, in fact, when we talk about defining a brand, we're talking about an idea around which everything centrally evolves. All sorts of aspect, whether it's the design, it's a promotional campaign, everything revolves around that idea, and that for me is definitely a brand. While we talk about this subject in an increasingly competitive marketplace, brands need to build and manage their brand equity and keep their consumers loyal. It also relates to brands overall image and what consumers associate with that image as well. What I wish to know from you is how can brands tailor their brand strategy to strengthen brand equity in line with fluctuating economic trends? And especially, we've seen this in the recent past with the malls being closed for quite some time, with a lot of offline brands which provided customer experience at their point of sale completely missing out. So how can brands tailor their strategy to strengthen the equity?
I think again the listening part has to come in, where brand has to listen more minutely to the customers, and also stay continuously connected, because in today's world it is a two-way lane. It's not that I'm advertising and you're seeing it and in a few months you will go and buy it. You can do it immediately, right? So say simple thing like, now what is possible is, say I'm watching television, and technology is available where say there is a BMW ad on the television, and that is nowadays taken as an opportunity where the person looks down at his phone, and we have intelligence enough where I can push a competitor's ad on your phone that time, right? So you have to look at those pieces, and you have to look at those opportunities when you talk to your people, when you connect. Make sure that you do not over connect or overcrowd somebody's space, so that somebody actually grows a blind eye for you and just overlooks. So listen hard and also be nimble on your feet. A lot of I have seen in my life, they create a strategy for a year, right? I don't think that works. Brand strategy should be more broken up into months, if not weeks, because the market is so volatile and everybody's likings. Like if you see design trends, earlier it used to last maybe 2 years, 3 years, then it became shortened and it was more 15 months. Now if you see, design trends and design systems change every 4 or 5 months. So similarly the lifespan has shortened. So brand strategy also has to be short and more nimble, to be able to cater to the consumer and be able to connect with them.
Absolutely well said, and completely relate to that. In fact, while talking about brand, one of the in things these days, Ayan, which most of the brands are talking about, is the responsibility for a more sustainable planet. In fact, it should not lie on shoulders of consumers only. Brands and companies should be a part of the equation by offering truly ethical products and services as well. There's a great opportunity for brands to use their voice to support and encourage diversity as well. The question that I have for you next, Ayan, is how can designers bridge the gap between brands and the society they belong to, its laws and its living beings too?
I think apart from brands and consumers, this is a huge opportunity for designers. Because we are always as designers, we start with like changing the logo, if allowed to do that. But it's a huge opportunity for designers to think in that space. And I have been seeing recently that a lot of brands are actually thinking of it and implementing it. Like a lot of people do a lot of lip service, right? But I'm seeing some implementation happening, like simple thing like uh, which are detergent bottles made of recycled material, right? And then toothbrush is one of the biggest problems of the world, right? But then some brands are coming up with toothbrushes where you can actually just change the bristle, right? So that actually cuts down effect on the environment like by nine tenths of what used to do earlier. So it's a huge space for designers and a huge opportunity, and my eyes light up when we see something like that, or say the type of cars that are coming which are more eco-friendly and stuff. So I think for designers it's a huge opportunity. We should just jump in and we should look at opportunities, and at times maybe create that white space, where there's a lot of furniture that is coming which is made out of recycled paper, and there are benches that are made out of tetra packs, which are compressed tetra packs. So we'll have to look at it, and ideas should come from us rather than somebody giving us a brief, because believe it or not, designers look at the world very differently, and we should put it to use.
Wow, absolutely well said and very relevant examples out there, Ayan. I think some of these have been perennial problems, and yeah, we've seen brands, we've seen design heads, we've seen leadership actually working towards some of these products and actually solving these perennial problems. While talking about brands, one of the other interesting elements these days within brands, Ayan, is the use of animations. They are perfect way to communicate feelings like static, dynamism, and hyperdynamism as well. In fact, the combination of these feelings can generate a masterpiece that breathes with innovation. The question that I have for you is, what are some of the emerging innovations and advancements in the animation industry that is shaping itself up?
Sure. So, like I think, and we've tried it many a times and it's worked. I think we are like that reindeer that keeps on staring at the headlights of a car when we look at anything that is moving, or anything that you add some music to it, it adds more value to it. So we earlier we had this 2D animation, and then we had films which were short, and then we had AR VR, which now we call as mixed reality, all living in their own space, But now, interestingly, all of these are coming together, and the boundaries are being lifted, and you can actually experience AR VR without the headset. So that space is very rich, I would say, because what has always remained is that our as human beings, we being able to connect to a story. Rather, if I give you a data, it is tougher to remember or retain, rather than if I give it to you in the form of a story. So storytelling has become a very strong medium, and all these I would say spaces for expressing the story, be it animation, be it shooting a film, be it AR, VR. Uh, all of them are lending themselves where they are actually blending into an immersive space, is what we call it. Immersive space where the boundaries are very blur and they keep flowing into each other, which entertains people, because now we've been bombarded with so much marketing that we are very seldom, the whole wow thing is very seldom that we see in ourselves, but then this is what keeps us engaged. And also what is important is the timing, since our say patience levels have gone down, like 3 to 4 seconds. If an app does not load, you would shut that app. So our patience level have really taken a hit due to the whole digital transformation. So how fast can you give a message, or how fast can you say a story in a very interesting way through these mediums, while capturing the whole interest level is the challenge. Because what we've seen is, like, rather than writing a mail which is like 3 4 scrolls, you send a small film with the message, and that has a way more recall value than an email or anything. So I think this is a very rich space, and we are also, as a team, diving in really deep and seeing how we can use it to our best effect.
Hey, did you know DigiBank, a Deloitte digital enabled platform that enables behavioral banking products and features by adopting an event based real time architecture driven by Finact's next generation cloud based core platform and a thriving fintech ecosystem. It leads to providing a well deserved modern banking experience to the customers. Interesting. That's a very interesting take and understanding of animation. I think as a space, I think it's a very relevant tool which has been used, which has been explored by multiple brands out there in terms of how do they go out there and create the impact. And while talking about animation, one of the things that I also want to touch upon, Ayan, is the entire aspect of technology in today's world. Technological advancements in different areas like artificial intelligence, automation, and many others are changing the way we experience things. They're grabbing the spotlight across many industries, from data entry to manufacturing to city planning, and we can continue that. The question that I have for you is, what are the opportunities and challenges visual designers will face in the era of automation and simplification?
I think earlier it was very tough to make a designer and an engineer sit on the same table and have mutual respect. But then thankfully we've got over that space, because now engineers and designers are working together. And even if you look at our education system, we have opened them up and exposed them a lot to engineering. So as a team, if I could talk from my personal experience, I have seen a lot of value add where both teams understand each other and they come to a table as one team, because engineering cannot do without design and design cannot do without engineering, because they have to work together as a team. And say example, different people of different crafts are getting into very different type of industries. So if you've seen the Nike pump shoe, right? That shoe actually was designed by an architect. So he's used his architectural knowledge into designing a shoe. So I would say there is no limit or horizon for visual designers. Just again, keep your eyes open, keep your mind open, and just don't think of the skill. Uh, when we talk about designers, we always try and tie them down to say that somebody is a visual designer, somebody is a user experience designer, somebody is an interactive designer, somebody is a film designer. I think as designers, our minds go wild. We just try and express it in a certain medium. So it just needs to change medium, is what I would say. To keep yourself open, keep your mind open, expose yourself to a lot of things, feel challenged, if you are feeling insecure, that is the biggest strength that a designer has, right? I keep saying that two designers cannot be best friends, because the day you stop thinking and growing is the beginning of the death of a designer. So stay insecure, but not as a negative piece, but so that you can open yourself more and learn more things, and don't I would say curb yourself in the form of any medium. uh, your brain is your asset, your visual capturing piece is your asset, so use them. And the expression can be in any medium, and you can always collaborate with somebody to do that.
Wow, absolutely well said, Ayan. And in fact, it perfectly brings us to the end of this conversation to my last question, which is at Avantika University, we've coined the term designeering, which is a unique blend of designing and engineering. The question that I have for you there is, do you think these concepts can converge and meet on the same line? Though you already mentioned that in your previous answer, but what do you think about this philosophy as such?
Yeah, I think that is already existing, because if you look at full stack designers, so they start from user experience to the visual design to interacting, and then they code it, and then they release it. So that's the way to go. But then where it restricts us is in different environments. Because of scale, we are not able to do that, because then it becomes a bottleneck. But then that's design engineering is the right phrase to the space that we are in now. So it's very important for the designer to understand what technology or platform his design is going to get implemented on, so that he designs accordingly. Whereas the engineer should understand the design space to say that this is what I need to design and build this accordingly. So design, earlier it was more skin deep, like put some colors, put some fonts, some line background, some little animation after you click the submit button, and it's done. But then that's not how design is implemented now. Like design is, say, something like a form which has some 150 fields, and what we did is, like, we understood the problem, and we said that there's this guy who actually fills some 20 of these forms, and just think of his plight where 60% of the form he just has to write not applicable. So how do we design it? So we designed it in a way where you just fill three fields are all that comes, and according to that three field, the rest of the form is generated, which all of it you have to fill. So that guy knows that I don't have to go through 150 fields, I have to go through maybe 20 or 30 fields, and my engagement is higher. So a designer and an engineer together thinks about this problem solving, right? And then implements it accordingly. So would you call it design by a designer, or would you call it design by an engineer, or an engineering by a designer? So it's technically design engineering that is in play now.
Wow, thank you so much for the validation, Ayan, and that example and that thought process. Thank you so much for joining us for this conversation. It was a lovely interacting with you, and I'm sure our listeners will have a lot of take home from this conversation. Thank you so much again for doing this.
Thank you so much for having me, Doit.
Welcome back to our new segment where we are hosting a design startup studio every month. And this month, we are hosting Embed Designs. Each startup is building a solution for another startup's problem. The question that I have for you there is, what are the typical challenges you see with your customers while defining user experiences, and how do you strategically address them?
Thank you so much for hosting us today and asking that question. We have had an opportunity to work with some of our clients in the recent past who wanted us to reimagine the experience for a particular audience. And while in the process, we realized that there is so much we can do to increase the inclusivity of people like elders and specially abled who are usually left apart from the world of UI. Now, we realized that the major challenge lie in defining the needs of customers and aligning them with the product and ultimately the business goals where most of the emphasis lies, right? To give you an example, we recently have worked on EdTech domain, where the end user were above the age group of 60. And while researching, we realized that there were so many things which we tend to ignore while working on a product, but might play a crucial role in the end user's decision making. And in this case, we had to reimagine the experience uh, for the users by designing the entire application, which has better colors, that can promote good contrast ratio, a better readability, and giving them freedom of choice to choose their font size. Uh, how can we have the entire information accessible in less number of clicks? And how can we reduce the text fields to generate data from the users and make it entirely gesture based? Because in order to reduce the number of times the keyboard pops up on your screen, and to actually input the data by looking at one key at a time, that is a time taking process, and ultimately makes them feel that, okay, that is something which is setting them apart from the other users. And all of these things, what we have seen over there, helped us ultimately make them feel connected and have a great experiences using the application for a longer time.
Wow, Arnav, that's really interesting. In fact, would you like to share some of the work that you have executed for your clients till date?
Sure. We have recently worked for a Singapore based client who wanted us to work on a mobile application where people can actually buy and trade shares in world class racehorses. And they wanted to create a marketplace for racehorses and allow trainers and owners to use this application for trading shares in their horses. Now, to us, the idea seemed pretty different to be implemented on a mobile application, and how actually the fact that they converted horses into a company, right, made us realize and reimagine the way we use our stock applications today, right, in order to invest in a particular company and buy the shares at some place. So now, in fact, even for that matter, while doing the category benchmarking, we had to consider all of these applications to understand the process and ultimately aligning them with how the marketplace works in case of racehorses, right? And along with that, there was another project where we had to work on an application for farmers where it has to deal with selling and where it has to deal with buying and selling of livestock, right? So again, over there, it was more in terms of the e-commerce of livestock and how farmers can actually see the information about various kind of livestock, the age, the way they look, the way they have been in the past, and how far they are from their location, so that if in case they want, they can actually even go and see them in reality. And how can these things make a huge impact in the decision making? And I think in most of the cases, it is very obvious that these businesses and change makers might have a good idea, but that's where we come into the picture, where you need to implement them. All right. So how can you make those ideas industry ready? How can you make those ideas sellable? And what is that you need to understand from your customers as well, so that ultimately you can have a good selling point for your product? And I think that is where we realize in both the cases uh, how we have added the value, and that was a good learning experience for us as well.
Wow, thank you so much, Arnav, for sharing your viewpoint. And we look forward to more interactions with you in our coming episodes. Stay tuned.
Hey there, we hope you enjoyed our show. Do write to us on ads@avantika.edu.in. We look forward to your opinions, feedbacks, and suggestions of speakers you would like us to host on this show. Do tune in our channel next week on Wednesday for a new story on Hubhopper or wherever you get your podcast from. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter.